Hello and welcome to the Rock and Roll to Success. Today I have my friend Johnny Cash Rodriguez again. The last time I talked to him here on the Rock and Roll, it was on Halloween for our Halloween special. And JC has been working a lot with newsletters, with marketing. He's done a lot of outreach since then. It's been a few months since the last time we talked. And he's very excited about what he's doing and what he's learning recently. And he'd like to share some good news with us. So, JC, the floor is yours, man. Thank you for coming. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Gabe. I always love hopping on podcasts and I love talking to you. It's always a new and interesting conversation. So,
Yeah, man, it's my pleasure having you as well. Always love talking to you, and it's good that we always learn a bit from each other.
yeah, so I guess we'll hop right on newsletters and we can find out where we go from there. But yeah, so I think, let me see, Halloween. That was quite a bit ago. I don't even know. I think I was still working on kind of my X direction then and shifting my brand. But yeah, I've been writing a ton of newsletters, uh, doing a whole lot of outreach, and kind of figuring out where I want to take this as more of a business. So I have my website's all done, and all my like business processes are all set and ready. We're working with a nonprofit right now to redo their newsletter, and that's been pretty interesting. It's a lot different angle that you have to look at when it comes to the whole process of attracting subscribers and people. So yeah, so that's been really exciting. I've done just a ton of cold outreach, mostly to local bit reasonably local businesses, like within probably 2 or 3 hours of me. And I can tell you that it's just a completely different ball game. Like when you're calling people on the phone, it's so much different than whether you're cold DMing or cold emailing, because there's so many more like clues you have to pick up on, and you really learn quickly, oh, well, this is definitely not the right thing to say, or the way to lead into a conversation or even open a conversation. So, yeah, it's been really exciting to learn that kind of sales aspect of it, because that's something that like I've never had a direct sales kind of job before. So, making those cold calls and trying to figure out how to express value to other people, it is just a really interesting process.
And did you get a little shy or intimidated when you first started and the first times you were calling people out of the blue? How was that for you?
Yeah, I think when actually the first person I called, it was funny because I called and I was like, you know, hey, I run this company. We help people set up and launch their newsletters. And they're like, oh, I think we're good. We have some sort of government grant that somebody's working on it for us already. And I was like, that's even a thing? So, um, yeah, that was kind of an eye opener because I wasn't really aware of how people even perceive them, because a lot of times when you're calling a business or a person about newsletters, they're not even aware of their potential. So you kind of have to bring that, okay, they just don't even realize that email can be used, like other than sending like either communication emails or, um, just like regular ads. Like that's all most people think when you say, oh, I do email marketing. They think, oh, well, you're just going to advertise, products, which in part is what I want to do, but also not, because an organic, newsletter is much more, or has a much better open rate. It's got way better engagement than just sending like ads all day long. So like figuring out how you can open a conversation around it rather than and like I know for like the majority of my first probably 15 to 20 calls, it was like, oh, I'm just going to call and pitch my offer, right? because that's what a lot of you hear on YouTube or different, whether you're reading about it or whoever you're learning from is probably going to be like, oh, well, just, break the ice a little bit and then go right into a pitch or go right into this. But as you do it more, well, why are they saying no? Or why are they not interested? Because I know like what I'm offering is valuable. So as you do it more, you start to realize, how can I make this more of a conversation? And how can I, change it so it's not like, because you eventually get to the place where it's less of, I have something to sell you, right? I think that's what a lot of people's main goal is when they first start learning sales. And then it becomes more, let's have a conversation so I can even see if there's anything that I can help you out with, or if you even are having these issues, and that was a huge mindset shift for me, especially even over like the last month, was shifting my ideology, even behind how I think of my service, how I think of X, how I think of my online presence, to less of what do I have to offer and more of what can I help you solve? Because at the end of the day, people value when their lives are made easier, or they can make more money, or, they can spend more time not at work. So when you focus more on, okay, maybe you're not getting the sales that you want, and this is how we can help solve it, rather than, hey, I can, build this newsletter for you and it'll be great. There's two very different things that can be achieved there. And the way that you convey those things to a person over the phone is a very radical difference. So that's kind of what I've been working on.
Yeah, so what I gather from what you've been saying is that many times those businesses, they are still so much at the top of the funnel, of the marketing funnel, that they aren't even aware of how you could help them because, like you said, they don't even know how a newsletter can be used. Like most people, well, many companies don't even have email marketing to start with. But the ones that do, many times they think it's just like a catalog or something that you can use to give basic, keep them engaged. You can build a community. You can use this as a tool to deepen your relationship with your customers. As at least from what I get from what you've been telling, most of those companies or many of those companies, they don't even know this. And then, as you said, like having a more consultative approach and looking, trying to read between the lines of what you can help them with that not necessarily would be your first offer, but maybe something else that just gets your foot on the door, and then from that you can start to build. And yeah, man, it's very interesting. I saw your post the other day about how many there are like 33 million small businesses just in the US, and anywhere in the world, really. If you live in a city, you have hundreds or even thousands of businesses in a few mile radius, and there's just so much opportunity. So, from the outreach that you've done and what you've learned in these last few months, how do you see the opportunities in this market to help businesses build deeper relationships with their customers or to sell more?
So I think opportunity wise, there's like I said, the gap is there. Businesses need better copywriting. They need better marketing. They need, better engagement on social media. All of these things are there as a need. They just don't necessarily realize their potential. And I think anybody on X has a way better head for marketing than pretty much any small business owner. No offense to small business owners, but I just from a lot of my interactions and from what I've seen, like even some of them have told me, oh, well, we do better with Facebook. And you go to their page and they have 4,000 or 5,000 followers and they get like 20 likes on their posts, and nothing, because like this isn't what I'm talking about, isn't even necessarily a localized thing. This is something that no one teaches in general public. Like nobody does deep marketing Everything is based around direct response. A lot of businesses still think that the only type of advertising that you can do is on the radio or a billboard. And like that's just a societal shift that we have not gotten to at all. People are aware of Facebook and Instagram and these other, types of media, but they don't necessarily know what that means for a better connection with their customers, right? And what that potential is. And like I say this a lot, any business that sells a good product or has a very good, customer service rating, like that's my main, like when I go look for these businesses is, do they have a good reputation already? Are they selling a good product? Do they have products online? Because if any of those check marks are there, email marketing can just, expand the business hugely because they're getting that foot traffic or they have an online presence somewhere. And then people can actually interact with them in a better way. I think the perception of Facebook or Instagram is that, oh, well, people come and like my stuff and then they see what I put out. Well, you know this just as much as I do, especially with X, like your followers, all of them are probably not going to see what you're putting out there.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to actually let them know in a reasonable way other than like messaging them all that you have something important. Whereas with email, like if you have 1,000 people on your list and a 50% open rate, that's 500 people. If you have 1,000 people on Facebook, you're lucky to reach 20 or 30 of them with something important, unless you have a very well like brand that people share and talk about. So that opportunity to not only connect and share and open the doors to, maybe you don't have any products online, or maybe you would like to, but you don't know exactly how, and you're worried about getting the exposure for them to sell enough. That email opens the door to that because it's not something that they have to go and get even. Everybody checks their email every day. And they may check their Facebook, but they might not see yours. When you're sending an email, they're going to get it in their inbox. And if they're interested, they're going to open it. And they already gave you permission to talk to them and share with them by signing up for the email. And like, in my opinion, giving your email is a little bit more intensive than, just liking something or following someone. So when that process happens, and then businesses have a massive opportunity to go even farther with it, like especially local businesses, like with segmentation nowadays, and you can segment by zip code and give local news or local events that are happening. People are going to be much more interested because you're increasing the community and they're feeling like, oh, well, this is actually somebody that is near me. It's not just some big corporation that's sending me whatever. And that it just opens a just massive amount of opportunity for these businesses to be able to grow their own brands and serve their customers better.
Yeah, it's funny because actually, before I came here, I was taking a shower and I was thinking about things to ask you. And this was exactly one of the things I thought about, like this David versus Goliath thing of the small companies, the small local mom and pop shops or smaller retail chains, but that are more local from wherever you live, and how they can try to not necessarily beat the big guys in their own game, but at least try to have some asymmetric advantages and beat them at a different game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the difference between small business can be like business in general is hard. 90% of businesses that are started fail within the first year, I think the statistic is. So the ones that don't and the ones that last a little bit longer, I think that percentage drops like maybe 10% over 5 years. Like maybe it's 80% after 5 years. The ones that don't are the ones that build a customer base that loves them and that comes back to deal with them because they're them. So when you're talking about how do we bring the customers back to continue to come back to us, is there has to be that engagement. Nowadays, it is so easy to order offline. Like, we live personally a long ways away from any large store. Like, the nearest Walmart's like an hour away. So for us, it's like anything other than groceries, we're going to order off Amazon, and it just shows up at our door. So there are a lot of things that I do go to small businesses for, but taking that advantage any way that you can get it, and it's not, I wouldn't say, there's lots and lots of great options for email marketing these days that most small business owners can do. It's not, I don't think, nearly as expensive as other forms of advertising or marketing. It's definitely more work intensive if they're doing it themselves. But the return on investment, in my opinion, is just massive. You think, how many customers does the average small business really need to survive? Is it 1,000, 5,000? Is it 5,000 a month? And if you can get those people to think of you first and come back to you every month, are you really going to be as worried about advertising in other places? Or are you going to make it easier and available for them to order from you online? Those are the things that information isn't, it's not what you learn when you learn Small Business 101, unfortunately. So, email, the great thing about email is it is so data driven, and it opens up the doors to different types of, I don't know if I want to say products, but different types of things that the business can sell. So whether it's digital products, or if it's like more of an entertainment based business, then they can move into like, I say entertainment, I mean like events or like skill based stuff. You can move into like video tutorials and add all kinds of different layers to the way that people interact with your business. You can make it more inclusive. You can, especially for event-based businesses, it's like, whoever scores 100 or whatever this week at our business gets on our newsletter. You start building those things that say, oh, this will give you, you'll get on this list that everybody gets to see. And there's 2,000 people in the area that get to see this list. And those are the things that give people the extra incentive to engage with your business, right? It's more than that Facebook giveaway. It becomes a part of who they are. I think a lot of X talks about finding your tribe and building your tribe, right? And it's the same way for a lot of things in life. And this is what I've been learning a lot about marketing also, is that on a smaller scale, which I think is important when you're thinking of small business, you want to build that people like us do things like this. Because those people in those small towns or cities or wherever, they're looking for that status, and they're looking for those other people that think like them. So when you reinforce that, they're going to think of you first. So yeah, I've been learning an incredible amount about marketing and sales, and just it's been really interesting to problem solve, even for businesses that I don't like get in contact with. I've been doing that. I got to record some more this week. But I've been posting them on, like, I go in and I look at an email funnel for a small business or whatever. I think I did one for a nonprofit last week down in DC. And I go from like their Google search page all the way out through if they have a welcome email. not, and it's incredibly difficult to actually find one that has a welcome email. That's what I spend most of my time doing. It's just looking for a business with a welcome email.
And have you been documenting this? Are you posting it anywhere that we can take a look?
They're on my X. I'm planning on putting them on YouTube also. I think I have 3 over on X, 3 or 4. And I'm planning on doing more like some of them I want to do actual well done ones, like from another creator or someone that has a really good funnel. But some of them I like to just go in and look at a business. 1 or 2 were of like a fitness business, and there was a coffee shop or a coffee company that I did. And I like that because it gives you some perspective on what looks good. And I think those viewpoints, even when it comes to our brands or anything, is really important to get from other people, because the way that you see something in your mind isn't necessarily how everybody's going to perceive it. And I know I've had a lot of that feedback before, and I enjoy videos where other people are explaining these things and out through these things, whether it's, and it can be about anything. But so I've just started making them. I don't know if they'll go anywhere, but I think it's a good exercise for me just to do personally.
Yeah, I think this could be very interesting to your audience and also to yourself, really. If you look at it 1 year from now, 2, 5 years from now, you will see the difference not only between, because you will have like this historical data, because you will be able to remember how funnels looked back then, but also you'll be able to see how you thought about them back then also. Like not only the funnels themselves, but also your thought processes, because I'm sure that they'll change a lot with time because you will be so much better by then. Not that you're bad, of course,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Oh
not
yeah.
what I mean. But
Yeah.
that's what we strive for, to learn a bit every day, and eventually in 6 months from now, we know that hopefully we will be much better at everything. So, and I think it would be interesting, man. I for one would be keen on watching your videos and seeing the breakthroughs or the breakdowns of the funnels.
Yeah. They're over on X. I've just got to make. I saw your friend the other day. He said just make a standard thumbnail up for YouTube or something and just put them on YouTube. And I have a page started over there. But yeah, that's definitely in the works. And if you know of any businesses that have like an actual good welcome sequence, I would love to review them. But that's like finding a needle in a haystack. So
Oh, it is. And back to something you talked about right in the beginning, that emails, they tend to be much more evergreen than our social media presences, because there's been MySpace, there's been so many different social medias, and we don't use them anymore. Or even
hmm
Facebook. I have Facebook, but I don't even remember the last time I logged in. It's just there like a museum.
yeah.
And like everything is totally, it's so old, everything that I have there, and I don't even remember. I just like, it's more a nostalgia that makes me not delete it. And sometimes the ease of logging into something with Facebook.
hmm
But at the same time, my email, I use it for like, it's like 12 years old or something. And I have thousands upon thousands of emails that I haven't opened because of this. I have so many things that I've logged into once or twice, and that still keep emailing me, and it's it's a totally it's work that I've tried to unsubscribe from a bunch of things, but anyways, I still get so much that I get overwhelmed, and I just decided to let it be. And I've just
hmm
looked, and I have 25 emails in my inbox.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'll keep it that way anyways. But yeah, we tend to keep our emails for much longer. So if you have someone's email, you might contact them for years on end. Even they might not even remember you. They might have moved to another city, another country, but you will still be able to reach them.
Yeah, I think
And
because I did look up the statistic on that, or not, I don't know, the history on it. The first email was sent in 19, a little, it's been around for a while.
yeah, because email is supposed to be the substitute for mail, and even physical mail still happens. So
Mm-hmm.
email probably will still be a thing, even if people start really going into the metaverse or whatever they call it by then.
Web 3. Um, I am interested in hearing your perspective on I don't know, marketing in general or sales funnels. We didn't go into the sales funnel thing a whole lot, but that is something I'm very interested in talking about also. But I would like to hear your perspective and how it's impacted you, whether on X or whether in I think you do real estate.
Yeah,
So there's probably a little bit of crossover there.
yeah, there are things that we're trying to improve considering sales funnels. To be honest, I only started looking up sales funnels around a year ago, a little less than a year ago. A friend of mine who's a designer slash computer engineer, he lent me and he pretty much gave me because it's still with me. Russell Brunson's book. I forgot which one of them. It's the first of Russell Brunson's book. Let me check. But it's about the funnels. You've probably taken a look because Russell is the guy when it comes to sales funnels on internet. So it wasn't Traffic Secrets, it was .com Secrets. So I think that's the first one of his books. And that's when I started seeing things through a totally different lens because, of course, some of those things like funnels and how they work, we do have a bit of a subconscious grasp or an idea of how they work because we see them all the time. But unless you take your time to really study them and the principles behind them, it's hard to really get the grasp of how we are so easy to influence by little things on the copywriting or on the
Mm-hmm.
way that the information is conveyed or order bumps when you're about to close a deal and you buy something else that you weren't supposed to buy or you buy more of the thing you were buying or
Mm-hmm.
upsells and cross sells as well. I started getting a bit fascinated with these concepts, so that's when I started looking more into this. But to be honest, I should try to implement more. I've just played around a bit with this. I played around with this on Gumroad as well with my info products, but yeah, it's something that sort of now permeates the way I do business or the way I think about business, but I really should use it more in practice, and try to cross-pollinate the people that work with me or work around me so that they have these ideas on their mind. Like we can definitely, if you have a service, you can definitely, and you should try to give them a cross sell, or you can have a partnership with another company. For instance, in real estate, we have a lot of partnerships with insurance companies, for instance. So if the guy doesn't
Mm-hmm.
pay, then the insurance company pays the rent for a few months, of course. They're not stupid. Or if there's a fire or some
Yeah.
sort of damage to the property due to natural circumstances, that also may happen. And so this is one of the cross sells you can do. Or in terms of upsell, you can try to do it with your service and with any service you can do this really. It was actually something I was thinking of offering some of my friends that are white-collar professionals, like lawyers or even dentists, for instance. Like you can have them do things that like repackage their offers basically. So my dentist friend, he will send you a WhatsApp message every 6 months or so to ask if you want to like schedule an appointment, but maybe he could package it in a way like you can pay however much a month, and you have like you can have a cleanup every 6 months with this, and you can have like if any emergency happens, you can call me. I don't know. You can do so
Yeah.
many things with funnels and with this mentality that it's really fascinating. Like you can use it in pretty much any industry. Not only we tend to think about the internet world and the info product world and media, but you can use it in anything pretty much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the interesting thing about having a well put together sales funnel is that it, like you said, it doesn't matter what you're in. Once you put those things together, like your dentist friend, like maybe if he has a WhatsApp or if he goes to like newsletters or email and then sets up a whether it's an Amazon shop or whether it's a Shopify and starts selling dental products or starts saying, yeah, well, if you shop through me, these are less expensive and we can help you maintain your teeth in between cleanings, right? Those are the things that it might be like not as much, but if he has 50, let's say his customer base over the year is right third, like he can get all of them to do like $100 a month. That's like what, 30 grand.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that we're talking about, and I don't think people realize that it's not that not that much. Like they're already coming to you for cleaning because they love your service. So now you're not only do you have the opportunity to educate them, and like when we're talking about funnels, like really that's what a funnel is it's educating the customer on why they need something and why it's helpful. And then you keep moving them down until they understand that their problem can be fixed by purchasing this, right? So I think when you look at those, any industry, whether it's a service that has an upsell or, whether you're a hair salon and you have products, you can do all these things and keep people engaged. And then it's less about getting the next client and more about how can I keep them happy and keep them recurring, right? Because that's what everybody wants is recurring revenue that they don't have to worry about. I think about it a lot with retainers and a lot of these freelancers and even some bigger freelancers that I've noticed posted lately, some bigger ghostwriters that have said like, oh, getting my next client is something that I still worry about. And it's like, that's very interesting. Like there is always that entrepreneurial risk when you're doing freelancing, but it's also like, I think after a certain amount of time for me, I would be looking at, okay, let me make either a ton of money right now and work really hard so that I can figure out some sort of other income stream or figure out how I can get my current clients to be more recurring and more stable, whether it's a longer contract that I'm doing for less or, something, I don't know, bring a little bit more stability to it. And I'm not saying that that's possible when you first start. I don't really think that's the case, but I would think after a little while, you would start to think of looking for more stability in how your service is presented. But yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting topic to think about for any business is the easy and present ability to sell not only your service, but products that relate to your service as well.
Yeah, I think when you start something new, of course, it's hard to have this recurring income because you're new, no one knows you, you're still figuring it out. But once you get a bit of a track record, once you have a portfolio, you have testimonials, it starts getting a little bit easier. At least you can throw a PDF or a landing page at the guys and say, look, check this out, like it and find it awesome and say, yeah, I want to work with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a daunting task when you're first starting out, especially, but in any point of a business to get new clients or to, and that's why maintaining the clients you already have is many times it's easier for one thing, because if they're with you, it's because they like your service, or at least they like it enough, or it's not that bad that they consider changing.
Mm-hmm.
So you sort of already have them hooked, and it's easier to keep the current clients satisfied than to find new clients. And also because there are only so many hours in the day. So if you're using up 2 to 3 hours or even more doing outreach, you won't have as much time to serve the clients you already have. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can get some clients to pay you on a monthly basis and you can focus more on doing good work for them, it's a win-win in my book. I saw this guy the other day, and I think he was like a web designer, and he did something that was genius. He did exactly what you were saying. He would make a Trello board for all of his customers so they could put, like, I want to change this on this page of our site, for instance. So they put a little note on the Trello board, and then he'd like answer them whenever he could, really. He
Mm-hmm.
he'd but he'd try, of course, to answer rather quickly. But the thing is, he was charging each company, I don't remember the number, if it was 1,000, 2,000, $3,000 a month, but he got like 10 companies. So
Mm-hmm.
he was, and the work for him was easy because he was an expert at that. But at the same time, he was providing an excellent service and he was responding to the changes they wanted quickly. And since it was all the communication, or pretty much all the communication, because I think he had like a 1 hour call a week or something like that with them as well, was done via writing and with pictures and everything. It was much easier. He didn't waste time like going back and forth through email or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And the guy was making tens of thousands of dollars a month, and without having the hassle of dealing with clients, like going back and forth and, oh, I don't want it this way. What if you do this or that? And sometimes you go on forever and the client is still not satisfied, but
Mm-hmm.
he figured out a way to do it that the client was always satisfied and he didn't have to waste time going back and forth.
Yeah, communication is massive. And that, whatever you can do, especially in the beginning, to specifically with client work, whether it's, like that kind of board, or whether it's in Notion or whatever you're using to communicate, that's not. I think having the picture part, that visual part, is massive in saving time, because it's less of I have to describe this to you, or I have to get on a video call and show it to you, and it's more of, is this what you wanted? Yes or no? And then it's yes. And I think part of what he's done there also is, I'm sure he's an expert, right? And I think a lot of people don't position themselves this way quick enough, is positioning themselves as the expert and saying, that's not going to work, or this is better. And I'm sure they have those things that they want to adjust. And he gives them more of a yes or no. And it's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because a lot of times people either don't know what they want, or they don't just blatantly know what's going to actually work. And when you're in that position of providing a service, it is good to make them happy, absolutely. But there is also a fine line between making sure what they want is what's actually going to work as well.
Yeah, you need to show that you know what you're doing and you've done it before. So sometimes the last word should be the expert's word, even if, of course, I think it's easier when you've already shown them that you can get results. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the first or second time that you're talking to them and doing something for them, maybe you should think more about their input,
Yeah.
especially
No, I'm not saying right
because,
away, but um
yeah, sure.
yeah, I was listening to a podcast that I found really interesting. by a copywriter that I really enjoy, and he was talking about how he just got a gig for a 9-figure company, so they're doing like more than 100 million in supplement sales, and like I want to say like vitamin kind of fitness stuff, but it was just really interesting to hear his perspective because the way that they had constructed their website and their landing page and their sales pages. So he said there was like, for each product, there was like 5 or 6 different buttons that you could push just to figure out like the size and the flavor and this and that. And that's what had happened because the executives or whoever were making the decision just told the web designers, oh yeah, we need this, this, and this. And that's what the web designers made. Right. So he came in and he was like, no, we need it like this, like one button, pick your option, press buy. Like, and he said they pushed back on him like, well, that's how it's designed. Like, we don't want to just overhaul everything. And he's like, well, when you go on Amazon, is there 12 different buttons you can push to order? No, because you want to make it easy for them to buy the thing that you want them to buy. So it was an interesting perspective. Not that I have a perspective, but I think a lot of people do, that like these giant, massive companies have everything figured out. And it is not that way at all. But I just thought it was really interesting how, that was what he was hired to do. And I'm sure those people were vetting him to see if what he was actually, talking about lined up with what was going to be reality. But it is interesting to think about, like, when we do get more experience in what we're doing, and I think there's always that, like, really, and I don't think you get good at it until you've been doing it for a long time, but that fine line between making sure that the customers get exactly or get the results that they actually want, and making sure that they feel like they still have decision control over some things that are important, So that it's an interesting thing to think about when you're in a service-based industry. Yeah.
Yeah, this reminds me of a story that I think is very interesting, considering experience, and there are things that you just can't learn by reading a book or by taking a course. You need to do it thousands of times, and with time, you will learn some things that are a type of knowledge that you just can't transmit easily. You
Mm-hmm.
can't put it in a book. You can't tell someone because the experts, they're doing some things in automatic mode. So for them, it's so ingrained, it's so second nature that it's hard for them to even think about it. It's something that for them, it's natural. They just do it. And this reminds me of the story there of a factory that they had this massive stop on the production line and they just couldn't figure it out. They tried everything they could, they looked into everything they could, and they couldn't figure out what was happening, why it stopped working out of the blue. So they call in this old engineer guy that had just retired, and he had run the factory for decades, but he had retired. So they call him and ask, "Hey man, can you take a look? Can you help us?" And he said, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" Right? Like, I'm tired of watching TV, wearing
Mm-hmm.
pajamas anyway, so let's do it. So he goes there to the factory. He walks around with a chalk on his hand, and finally he just makes a big X on one of the machines. Then he takes another look, and yeah, it's this one. So he just opens it up, takes a screwdriver, turns turns the screw like a quarter of the way. Then he tells them to run the machines again, and it works like a charm. So everything starts working again, and they're like, "Wow, this guy just came in and he turned one screw, and everything's working. Like, how did he know that that was the screw, that was the machine, and that this would make it work?" So the next day, he sends the voiceover to the factory like the head of the factory, it was like $10,000 or
Yeah.
something ridiculous, some ridiculous amount, whatever you think is ridiculous. I don't even know how much it would be, but like $10,000, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And then the guy gets pissed. He's like, dude, $10,000, you just came here and turned the screw. Like, we're not paying you $10,000. Like, that's that's insane. So he sends another receipt with like a detailed voiceover.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like turning the screw, $1. Knowing which screw to turn,
Yep.
$9,999.
Yeah,
So, so
exactly.
so yeah, man, in the end, experience and knowing what you're doing comes from years and years and thousands of tries that you need to take. And there are things that will be second nature for an expert, because they have the trained eye, they can just look and they know what's wrong, they know what's up, and it's like a coach or a psychologist that can, with a word or a phrase, change your how you think about things. And yeah, it's really interesting. And the other thing I was thinking while you were talking was that we tend to think that those large companies like Amazon have everything figured out, but what they do have actually is kind of the opposite. They have a bunch of really, really smart people, and they give them some leeway to experiment and try things out and do A/B testing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have thousands of smart people doing A/B testing every day with all the buttons, all the colors, all the everything that they have, of course they're gonna get massive results because they have like thousands upon thousands, maybe even millions of iterations. One day, one of those guys said, "Dude, we should have a button so you could just like click a button and you pay everything. It just gets to your house." And
Mm-hmm.
one day someone will come up with something different. And of course, many of the things, actually, most of the things that they've come up with didn't work out and they cut those things out. But you got to try.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, man, how do you see the future for with Web3 and AI? How do you see the future for media, for companies and newsletters?
Yeah, I think that's there. There's a lot of talk around it, and where that implementation actually comes in, I'm not sure. I think it's going to come a lot faster than people are expecting. I don't really have a lot to talk about in the Web3 space because one, I've never even stepped put my toe in, so I have no idea. I like a very, 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 very high level understanding of Web3 in the sense of like security and better control of your information. But I don't have a lot to comment there. I have a little bit more to comment on the AI part, just because that's another thing that I've been learning an incredible amount over the last 6 months, and I think I have you to thank for leading me on to David Shapiro. I think you
He's
shared
awesome.
his one of his videos like a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, and like whenever his next video comes out, I always watch it and download it. I think I watched two or three today actually, and I like him because it's not even just about AI. Like it's about how we interact as humans and our like different parts of our psychology, and he applies it to politics and just thinks about it in a incredibly diverse kind of way. And so I have not been in the AI space for a very long time, but I have seen how it has affected people and businesses, and I have started to use it. Like I use it to either get different perspectives on what I'm writing. Like a lot of times I'll put something into it and then say, how would you think if you were like thinking like this kind of person? And it helps you like get that different perspective so that what you're writing feels more engaged. And you know, there's so many more layers to that, and I'm an absolute novice with using it. But I think those things that or that it's making more efficient now in writing and communication are just going to grow. And then when I don't know, and I'm not an accelerationist, but I've seen how technology, I mean, has advanced even in my life. I was very involved in technology when I was younger, and from even then to now is just an incredibly massive leap. I just rebuilt my computer this last year. I just got a new GPU and power supply actually a month ago. And the amount of processing power of this computer compared to the one that I built 10 years ago compared to the one that I was using like 8 years before that is just incredible. So now when I see AI and I see like how much more how more efficiently it can do work and compile information that we never, would be able to do on our own. And it's like in a research aspect, how much is that going to advance our materials, and how much is that going to advance the way that we calculate things, and how can it help us look at things differently? A normal human would never be able to consume every piece of literature or wording on the face of the earth. Like like we have to be realistic about what its capabilities are in thinking of. So now it's taking all those perspectives and trying to solve one problem
At the
instead
same
of
time.
when you have right, when you have one person and their experience, even if they're, an older scientist, they still don't know all of either the latest and up-to-date information. They're still pulling from all of those, all of their biases and all of their understanding of things, whereas even these large language models right now can pull from places that we would never imagine and never could do. So that impact, I think, is just going to get greater. I don't know. I am personally one that does not worry about things. So I look at things and say, wow, this is really interesting, and I'm going to use it to my advantage if I can. But I also fully realize that most likely no one is going to be able to stop or change what is going to happen. Like I don't think collectively everybody's going to get together and say, oh, well, everybody just needs to stop researching AI right now. Elon Musk said that it should be slowed down like 6 or 7 months ago, and I don't think anything has been slowed down since. So like, that's kind of my perspective on a lot of things, is that I don't have a idea of I need to worry about this because it's not something that's inside of my control. Like I just worry about the stuff that's inside of my control, if that makes sense in this aspect. But yeah, as for AI in general, I'm excited. Personally, I think it's going to be a great thing. But I would love to hear some of your perspectives on it also. Like there's so much to dive in when we talk about AI in the near future. So
Yeah, we could go on forever talking about AI. Yeah, I like David Shapiro very much. To be honest, I haven't watched his latest videos for a while, but I really like how he gets some philosophical takes and sociological takes and thinking about the future of society, of humanity, and how these new technologies will revolutionize pretty much everything because it's all of this computing power and all of this access to pretty much all the information about a subject or about multiple subjects at the same time. It's something unprecedented. I remember a few years ago, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about IBM's Watson and
mm,
how it was better than doctors, like human doctors already up around 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I was listening to this, and how it was better than human doctors at diagnosing diseases or at finding potential cures because it could go into all of the documentation about a certain disease or a certain type of exam. And now not only does pretty much anyone or anyone who have access to $20 a month have access to what they were having access to by then, but even more, we have multimodal LLMs that can listen to you and then they can transform that into text. They can transform text into video, text into images. They can transform images into video. They can do a bunch of stuff that 1 year or 2 years ago we would never think were possible in the first place. But we are getting so used to them that we don't even think of them as amazing as they are, but they still are pretty amazing and we get used to them. And I think humans, we get used to good things really quick
Mm-hmm.
and bad things not so quick. So we're a bit spoiled, I think. Like 1 year ago, I had heard of ChatGPT, but I hadn't used it yet. And from then to now, I've used it so much on so many things, and it's not even the only one that's out there. There are many others. And yeah, I to be honest, a few years ago, and it might have something to do with other things I was dealing with at the time, but I was a bit consumed by doomerism at the time. So thinking, oh my God, the machines are gonna take over. They're gonna take all the jobs. I will be jobless and like I will be hungry and something like that. But nowadays, yeah, I think just like you, man, it's something out of our control anyways. And like if we are obsessed about it or if we are anxious, it won't change the gist of the thing. So we gotta try to learn how to use them properly. And another thing that I've seen a lot in the last few months, people talking about is that it's not that the machines themselves will necessarily take your job, but the people that know how to use them will. So if we have the opportunity to be among the first ones to learn how to use these things well, why not take it?
Yeah, it's the opportunity of being at the front of the bell curve, right?
Yeah,
um,
if we can be the early adopters, why not? It's one of those opportunities, one of those chances. There's this saying, they say, I think it's not even 100% correct, like the translation, but like in Chinese, the same ideogram that says crisis is the same one that says opportunity. It conveys both meanings.
mhm.
And at the same time, of course, many people might lose a job or many people might face, or at least psychologically face things due to AI and due to technology. But at the same time, there's so much opportunity, and to everyone that we interact on a daily basis, and everyone that will probably watch this, you guys are in the forefront. You guys are
Oh
leading
yeah.
this. So you don't have anything to be scared about. Just continue with what you're doing and double down on it. You can use those tools to help you leverage, be quicker doing your job or do it faster, do it better. And if you can do it, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to share two quick really stories that I saw today and heard, and then I wanted to talk about that a little bit also. The one was a news blip about this guy that used AI to like he built himself into an AI and then he set it on like 6,000 some women. And at the end of a year, that AI had like filtered through like a relationship with all these women down to one. And then he proposed to that woman at the end of the year. But she, like, they never knew that they were talking to an AI version of this guy. And, which I don't know if I think I find that a little bit more disturbing than anything else. That it's already that good at being able to feed into people. And you kind of ask the question, oh, well, is anybody that I'm talking to real? Because, bots are a huge thing. And I think that stuff is used. And then the other really interesting one that I'm copywriter. Two parts was that they had used AI to completely write like a landing page and a sequence, and it performed, not, I don't want to say marginally is not the word, exceptionally better than the same page. Like they A/B tested the AI versus like a A-list copywriter, and the AI's page performed much better than the A-list copywriter. So it was interesting. They said that it's getting much closer to the point where if you know how to use it well, it's going to serve you very well, right? Because I think there's clear and obvious things that are done by AI, but the people that have it figured out really have the ace in the hole. And the other part of that story was, and going back to the chat thing, and I have no idea what company or whether the story is 100% real, but I would imagine it's probably real. It doesn't seem that far from the truth. This company was using AI to chat with their prospect clients, and they were doing like 300 at a time with AI. And these AI were like closing up to 10 deals a day. And I'm not talking about like chump change. Like some of them were up to like $75,000.
Wow.
And then they'd schedule a call with these people and then close the deal over the call. But the AI was handling all the objections. They were handling, discussing the benefits of the product with the people. And it's just like how, we're already at that point where it's possible. I know actually personally my buddy, they had recorded his CEO's voice and started putting a bunch of prompts through AI, and then they built out a response system for their call center, to where someone could press a certain button on the call and it would be the CEO's voice and it would be AI generated responses. And by the time they got through those responses and went to a real person, like no one even knew that it was an AI that was talking to them. Through these generated responses, and they could, like, you can clone voices pretty well, with AI, and it's just, you hear a lot of these stories, and then you think that it's really incredible how well the AI does these certain things, and also the ramification of those jobs, like the one copywriter, he said, like, do you know how much that would normally cost him in appointment setters and salespeople? Well, that is just like a massive overhead that's taken away. And I think about, like, those are the first people that are really going to be severely affected are people in call centers. And they are those people that have those, I don't necessarily want to call it lower type of work, but it's something that is very, like, you're working through a problem with a person for doing calls. And that can be replaced pretty easily because it's just language and matching them up to a needed response, right? So how we're going to get through that phase into the next, and David Shapiro talks about this level a lot, the actual levels of how AI is going to address more and more difficult work, because we're at the beginning. And while creative work is valuable in the eye of the beholder, there is some work that is necessarily easier that is going to be just swept away by AI. And when larger companies see it, they're going to go with it. And when we getting to that transition point, which I think is what you were talking about a little bit, is where do we transition from AI is just taking away from jobs and AI is helping us, solve deeper issues so that we can actually redefine work and say, okay, well, if AI has advanced, or AGI, I should be saying AGI this entire time, like, because that's what we're really talking about. We're not really talking about AI. Where is that line of it's now helping us completely satisfy all of our basic needs for survival, and we can shift our mindset to completely changing our perspective around work and how we need to move forward as a race or humanity. Like, I think those are questions that for us to talk about and discuss are okay. And I have brought this up to, like, my family and stuff. And it is a scary thing for normal people to think about. It's incredibly scary because even like the general, I think, perception in politics, at least in the US, or the general perception of the public is like, what are you from Star Trek? Like that's still the idea of these technologies to people and that they're so far away. And I think a lot of legacy media necessarily will still put that out like, oh, this isn't coming for another 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, And, like anybody that has been in the AI space with a reasonable amount of time understands that those have been moved back to 5 years, 10 years. It's not
6 months.
unusual. Yeah, 6 months.
No one knows,
Right.
but it's always
Yeah.
decreasing instead of
Um,
increasing.
right. It's a really interesting thing to bring up to people. Like, if you want to talk about something that riles people up, talk about AI to somebody that hasn't really heard about it or is, in that doomer kind of mindset. Like it's very very interesting. Just, go ahead.
No, yeah, I think the problems we will face are more on the cultural and societal aspects and political aspects than the technology itself, because the human machine interaction thing is, I think, is the hardest problem. Like you said, most people have no idea what's happening, or the ones that have a bit of an idea think it's much more far-fetched than it really is. And we know that it's something that it could be like 5 years is a reasonable amount of time to get to AGI. And actually, it might be something that we've already gotten to, but we
Mm-hmm.
don't acknowledge that we have, and we're sort of moving the goalposts every time. So we might never get to AGI because we're always moving and making it harder to get to. But actually, if you think about it, like if we fought 20 years ago, all the things we have, is that not AGI? Like,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, man, this is so interesting. I think also many white collar jobs are gonna disappear, and many of them are actually even easier than the blue collar ones to replace because they're
Mm-hmm.
basically information or making choices, or there are things that are more easily replaceable by computers or by technology, while there are many things that are still difficult to reproduce with a robot. For instance, care caregiving or caretaking patients at a hospital is something that robots can't do really well yet, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
in the near future, in a few decades, in 100 years, they might. And yeah, there are many of these jobs that might take longer to replace, but at the same time, how long is too long? Like 200 years is too long, 100 years, 50 years. Anyways, it's still
All right.
very fast and it's still a huge change. And how are we gonna deal with it?
Yeah, from someone that currently works, well, like my job isn't blue collar quite anymore because I'm on the engineering side, but I worked on power lines for 7 years, and that's something that you might not necessarily be able to train a robot to do. But like I swear, I was talking to somebody about it today, and it's less of, oh, well, how are you going to replace like the actual physical labor of working on power lines, and more of like, okay, well, what if AGI helps us research in the next 5 to 10 years to make microgeneration at people's houses possible? And you won't need power lines at all. You start to think about those things that just the research perspective of how it's going to help us advance our materials, and because like even right now solar is still not I just did a job the other day, like it's incredibly expensive to have solar installed, and it's just not worth it, right? But in 10 years, if AI can help us research our materials and bring that production cost down to where it's inefficient to, you know, transmit power on power lines, like, those are some possibilities that are there. Solar is 10 times farther than where it was 20 years ago. Um, so like even I think the blue collar jobs are definitely going to take the longest to replace. But I don't think that they're, like you said, out of the realm of possibilities. And they're an eventuality, and that's the way that I kind of like to think it and present it to people. Like, um, this is not really, it's not really what if. It's an eventuality at this point. And I think that we who are at the front of the bell curve kind of have a responsibility to bring people at least to a reasonable understanding of those around us in a very gentle way of, hey, this might be something you're thinking about over the next few years because it is going to radically change some people's lives. And I think as we're excited and we're using it, that it isn't too much to kind of spread that knowledge around too. And people are hard to talk to, but I think it's a great point, a great starting place to move people towards that. It's the same thing that I was talking about earlier with business and marketing. Like people are still way behind where they need to be. And the more ways that we can find to spread that knowledge so it isn't that shock to the other, you know, 7.5 billion people on the earth, I think is important.
Yeah, for sure. Most people either have not heard of the AI possibilities or they're reticent and they simply don't look at it or they don't even try. They say, oh, this is not for me, or they don't even really, it's hard to even understand how much of a revolution we're living if you don't go in and look at it for yourself. It's like telling someone that the water in the pool is good, but the person didn't jump in. Like it's hard to explain
Mm-hmm.
to them if they don't want to try it. It's like, yeah, I
I'm
have.
kind of curious, as you know, because you're obviously in Brazil, and how is like the general sentiment, or have you like ever tested that waters? Even with like your friends or the people that you work with. Have you ever like seen what their perception is of it?
Yeah, man, I think, of course, the people that are closer to me, they kind of get it through a bit of osmosis, so they have a better understanding, I guess, or at least a bit of an idea. But the general public or friends that I don't talk to as much, they have no clue.
Yeah.
Like really, they might have heard about ChatGPT or many of them haven't even tried it yet. And one of the ones that has used it more is was the lawyer friend I was talking about in the beginning because
Mm-hmm.
he's like my best friend, so I've talked to him about it a bunch of times and he was using GPT 3.5 in the beginning and I told him, dude, you need to pay it. It's like worth two employees and
Yeah.
you're paying just $20. And he finally came around and he said, okay, I'll try it for a month. And the first day he was like, "Bro, I should have done it sooner." Like it's mind-blowing what you can
Oh
do.
yeah.
And he didn't even like I don't think he's ever looked at any videos of the guys that are really good at prompt engineering or anything. He's just tinkering a little bit. But anyways, he still found ways to make his life easier and do things faster. And sometimes he'll ask me about something and then I can like guide him in the right direction. Like, yeah, man, have you tried this? And he's like, oh my God, you can do that. And you're like, yeah, man, it's
Yeah.
pretty straightforward. You just ask it what you want and it will give you. And then like a few days later, he's like, man, it worked. But yeah, in general, most people have no idea, no clue.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. Brazilians are quite early adopters of technology when they have the chance. So, for instance, cell phones were a thing that people adopted quite quickly when they started, like the price started going down and they were more affordable. And like smartphones and social media is something that Brazilians absolutely love. Even the old guys love it. But yeah, in terms of AI, at least from what I've seen so far, most people have no clue.
Yeah. I mean that's not any really different from here either, because I would say 98% of the people that I'm around have absolutely no idea. And I think I've been trying to think for a little while how I can use it at work, to make my life a little bit easier. But yeah, it's just an interesting place that we're getting to. And yeah, we could talk for hours about this. So,
Yeah, we definitely could because, and I think this is one of the reasons as well, because since so few people know about this and so few people are trying it out and are tinkering with it and researching it, you kind of don't have a lot of people to talk to about this.
hmm
And we kind of get into our little own echo chamber on X or in other places where nerds gravitate.
yeah, absolutely.
And most people, the normies, they have no idea. And it's a wave that's coming and it's coming soon. And it's actually, I'd argue it's already here, but people haven't noticed yet.
hmm
And yeah, man, it's fascinating. Like being in the middle, in the eye of the storm, and knowing you are in the eye of the storm, it's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's like going to San Francisco in 19 and
hmm
like knowing this is the gold rush of our era, or this is the, or maybe it ends out being a bubble as well, or both. But yeah, it's pretty fascinating to live and like see history being made, like the kinds of things that our grandchildren will study in school if they're if school is still a thing by then.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's just so interesting to think about, like, especially once we get into even more advanced stuff. And this is the like it still doesn't do math. Like, if we're being really honest, and once we get over that hurdle, I think it's going to become really a really interesting ride. I don't know. I'm just excited. I want to have like personal music teacher eventually. I think those other applications of teaching and learning from AI is just going to be really incredible too. And it already is. I don't really use it as much as I should. Well, I should say consciously. I'm sure AI has heavily influenced my YouTube and Google journeys, but I know a lot of people that like will go to Chat GPT instead of Google, and I still don't do that at this point, and I know I should. But I think it's very interesting to think of in the very near future we will be able to say, here's what I am, this is what I've been working on, here's my work, what do I need to learn next? And it will just make you a lesson. Like, it's going to be able to do those things and tailor your learning experience to exactly where you are so you can get to the next step without having to do an hour of searching or half an hour of searching, and it can build those things for you right away rather than having to pay someone to do it. It's just those next steps, I think, like when after we moved past the redefining work, I think are going to be a really interesting period in humanity, because we're going to be able to focus on art and spirituality, and we're all going to be able to work together eventually, I think, because the playing field is going to be much more leveled across the entirety of humanity rather than kind of how it is now. At least that's what I would like to think is going to happen.
Yeah, you have a very positive outlook on how things are going. I hope you're right. Yeah, can
Yeah,
you
we'll see.
imagine if we had these tools when we were growing up and still in school? And imagine a few years down the line how like the education system will be or how it could be, because it probably will be more or less the same thing, but with some AI wrappers. But imagine
Mm-hmm.
the possibilities that we could have, like how much more one human teacher with a bunch of AI tools teaching the kids and the kids being able to ask the AI a bunch of questions and then the teacher can sort of sum it up and make the classroom an environment more for a discussion and for things that, like, at least my view of the current school system, and it's not even current, it's something that's coming from like 2 centuries already, and it's the same thing. And it's
Mm-hmm.
very, they try to put you into a little box, and everyone has the same learning experience. And you might be very good at math, and you could speed run math and go into deeper subjects, go into deeper topics, and at the same time be not so good in history, for instance, and have an easier time with history. Like, have school be more like a video game that it adapts to your level, so you can have an experience that's always motivating. Because I think this is one of the reasons that many kids also have a problem with school. They either are bored because it's too easy or it's too hard for them. And then the teachers try to make something that goes for the average student and ends up not meeting anyone but the average guy. Possibilities we would have, or that we will have, with AI in education. I think this is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's definitely. I had, and maybe we talked about this a little bit last time. I had a little bit different experience growing up because I was cyber schooled pretty much my whole education. And looking back on it, and some of the stuff that I've learned over the last 6 months, even I'm incredibly grateful that I got that opportunity. Because I think if I had been in a regular brick and mortar school, I would have been like put on Adderall and told that like I was a spaz, and I still am a spaz, but I have I'm not locked into a classroom where I can't do what I need to do. And that what you're talking about there about treating students individualistically is incredibly important. And that's the unfortunate part about the way that the majority of our school system is now, is it just does not have the ability or capacity to individualize teaching at all. Like, and I know my mom always tells me the story um, of when she was teaching us, because we were originally homeschooled for a little while. And I always had to be either up, walking around, or drawing, or doing something else, listening to music. I would often have a headphone in one ear. I grew up, I mean, until I was probably 17 or 18. Everywhere that I went, I had a headphone on and I was listening to something. But she would always say, my sister would get frustrated because she had to sit down and like focus. But I could always wander around and do whatever because I could listen to what my mom was saying, and I still can listen to things and repeat them verbatim when I'm not paying attention. But I think that's a part of low latent inhibition. But that being able to have that freedom at home to be able to walk around or do what I needed to do and learn in the way that I needed to learn really let me not hate school. you know, I would never struggle with school. Straight A student, never had any issues with it. But I think that part of that was because I could do what I needed to satisfy the other parts of my brain while I was learning. So I think, and that excites me for my children, that in by time they're ready to start learning, and not that they're not learning now, I'm teaching my daughter to read. We're going through like musical instruments, playing the ukulele, different stuff like that right now. But it excites me that she's going to have those resources to learn whatever she wants, whenever she wants. I would like we're going to homeschool or cyber school, one or the other, but we're going to be able to give her those options that I didn't even have to learn whatever she's interested in now, and it's just really exciting to think about that even that barrier of courses and standardization, and like there are certain things you obviously need to learn and continue to learn, but if it's less linear and more practical, and more, okay, these are everything, the subjects that you need to learn, and here's how you can be interested, and here's what you ask if you have any questions, and we'll answer absolutely anything that you need to know about a certain subject instantly. That instant feedback is, I think, just going to be a massive, massive game changer for education with AI. So, sorry, I've been monologuing for like forever. So, you go
Oh,
ahead.
oh no, I was having a blast thinking about this and how we can use this to help kids all around. Not only kids, also adults, because
Hmm.
like we were saying, many people will need to retrain themselves and find something else to do with their lives because they won't be able to work with the skills they learned at first. But since you mentioned low latent inhibition and the way you were talking about this, I think I might have this as well. So could you talk a bit more about what this is and like how it shows up and how having this, or I mean, it's not a condition or anything, but like how do you see the world differently than most people having low latent inhibition?
Yeah, I've talked about this a little bit, and I've done a pretty considerable amount of research on it. It's hard to find information on it because it's not a massively well known or well researched condition, because it's often filed under either ADHD or autism. And when we're talking about low latent inhibition specifically, it's talking about how your mind processes familiar things. So it's less about like attention, and people with it are often viewed as they aren't paying attention, or they're easily distracted, or they can't sit still, or, like a lot of these things where to that person, it is perfectly normal. And I know the first time that I heard about this from our friend, when he was describing it to me, it's like, yeah, this is me. Like, it's not that I'm not paying attention. It's that I'm really focused on this one thing, and I'm very aware of everything that's going on around me. But this one thing is like what I want to know about. And with low latent inhibition, what you see is those different things that a normal person would not even think about, right? So it's the thing that's not necessarily even out of place. It's just different. So if there's like a wall that you're normally used to seeing, but it has like a little dent in it, and you start going, oh, well, what made that dent? And was it a kid? And why were they here? And why? And you start asking all these questions about your environment, um, that a normal person would just like, they'd walk right by because it's just a dent in the wall. It's normal. But with low latent inhibition, those familiar things really intrigue you, and they make it, like I said, that's the second part, is you see these things, you're very focused on them, but you're not unaware of what's going on around you. And then you start asking, like, why is this way? And you ask why to the fifth degree, and it helps you figure things out and have a better understanding of your environment. But a lot of times it's viewed as he's just zoned out, or he's not paying attention, when in reality you're just thinking about a lot of other things that normal people aren't thinking about or aren't focused on. So the three like things that make, I guess, a more classic definition of low latent inhibition that differs it from, I'm just gonna make sure that I read these right, that make it a little bit different, or necessarily the requirements that differentiate from like ADD or autism. Let me find it here. You go ahead for a minute while I look for this. I have a
Yeah,
lot of
man,
photos.
I can resonate with that because I also do this a lot, and sometimes I really do zone out and I'm totally immersed in my thoughts. But if someone calls my attention to it, I will repeat exactly what they just said. And I wasn't even paying attention, but somehow I listened to it and filtered it, and I can repeat the last few sentences or the last sentence, and I'd be like, "Yeah, you just said this, this, and that," and it gives the I shouldn't be giving away the secret and testimonial. This is a testimonial against myself, but yeah, sometimes I do this like. I faked that I was paying attention, but it was just that I could perceive it in the background, but actually I was really zoning out and thinking about totally different things that have nothing to do with the current environment I'm in. And I even used to do this at school because sometimes they would tell people to like put your desk together in a group of three or four, and I'd be with my friends doing the lesson or the whatever we had to do. And but at the same time, I was engaging with them or doing the homework or whatever we had to do. I could still listen to the groups around us, so I could still perceive and understand and know what they were talking about. And one time, like, there was this group of girls just like on our side, and one they were talking to each other, and suddenly I just like answered them like one of them asked the other a question, and I just like gave an answer that to the question, and it was they were like, "What the fuck? How were you listening?"
I know. I do that all the time. It's like, and I do it out of place too. Like, have you ever noticed when someone's like just asking a question to somebody else and then you like respond instantly? Yeah, I do that all the time. And it's like, oh, I didn't need to answer that question. It wasn't towards me. But you're listening, right? Like you were saying, it's something that is so unconscious to you because you make those decisions so quickly and you run through that answer. Like you can't help yourself but answer it because you're either like you're working through something on your own and you want to help that other person get to that conclusion, right? So you just go, okay, this is the answer. And a lot of people with low latent inhibition are very, very, very logical, right? I know I get this, and this is something I work on constantly, is like having empathy towards other people because they're not reaching the same conclusions as me as quickly. Because it's like, okay, so I've been thinking about this subject and this is the conclusion I've reached because I've thought about these 12 different ways that it could play out. And to me, this is the best option. And then it's like, okay, for you, it's the best option as well. But that whole thing about being able to focus on something else and repeat back what they're saying, it's so weird for people. I know, like, with my wife, it has always been a huge struggle because, like, I'll be actively engaged in doing something, and I'm very focused, right? I'm sure you have experienced some of the same things, is that you're very focused on something, and you're thinking about it, and someone can come up and talk to you, and, like, you finish your thought. Like, and it's not instant, which drives them nuts, right? Because you finish your thought on what you're actively thinking and working on, and then you look over at them, and then you repeat what they say back to them. My wife is like, "Why do you do that?" She's like, "Why can't you just respond to me?" Because I was finishing what I was thinking about, and it's difficult because people just don't understand you. They think you're like some person that doesn't pay attention to anything. And I know I got this a lot when I was younger. I didn't find the piece that I was looking for. So this is what is the rare part about low latent inhibition, to be able to use it very well. The first thing is you have to have an IQ over that you have low latent inhibition, that you're not autistic, and that you have manageable anxiety levels. Like, those are the really rare cases of LLI that people, I would say, like you and me, or that's when you know you have low latent inhibition and not some other things. Like, people can have low latent inhibition. I think the key point is when you have that IQ over that allows you to manage your stress and the actual, like, things that you're taking in, because that's a lot of, right, what autism is they can't process everything that's coming into, like, everything's a huge overload.
Yeah.
in someone that's autistic, and that's why they react like they do, and everything is this big deal.
Yeah,
Whereas
they're
someone with,
hypersensitive, right? And
yeah,
get overwhelmed.
exactly. So when you have low latent inhibition, that hypersensitivity to different things in your environment is still there, but you have the ability to process it and function with it like a reasonably normal person. But it just helps you think in ways that other people would never even consider. And yeah, so that's kind of a brief overview, like so brief. And I don't want to necessarily like say that I'm self-diagnosing, but it's also one thing that's really, really hard to find anybody that's going to talk about. And most, like 98% of the time when you discover you have low latent inhibition, it's because somebody else that has it has explained it to you, and you're like, yeah, you just like, that was my whole life that you just talked about. And how, that's kind of how I discovered it and why I did so much research on it, because it was like, this person feels the same way that I have always felt, and I've never understood how to express it to somebody else.
Yeah, so it's pretty much contagious.
Yeah. Yep.
So, is this a normal thing for people with low latent inhibition that you sometimes you get obsessed with a topic and you just can't get enough of it, so you research everything you can, you read, you watch videos, you just can't stop thinking about it until I don't know, until you find something else. But yeah, you have this idea and you kind of obsessed with a topic, and then a few months down the line, okay, now I've learned everything I need about this. Now I can obsess about something else.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, because there is a high intelligence level there, and there's a huge creative level there, because it's not even, and like I said, that's the second half of it, is asking those why questions to the fifth degree, right? When you have something you're interested in and you're asking those questions and you're hyper aware of, okay, well, what's next? Why is this way? Why does this act like this? And, you know, for me personally, like, I can give you a good example. Like, I taught myself how to play guitar over the last 3 years, but I've gone deeply into music theory. I want to understand what I'm hearing, why I'm hearing it the way that I'm hearing it, why, how I can improve my posture and my fingers, and why the pickups work the way that they do. And, how can I adjust things to make it sound like this? And now I build guitars and like, I saw the lumber for the guitar, and then I'm building the bodies, and I have a bunch of pickups to put it all together with. And like, it's like I'm obsessive over these things to where a normal person probably would never even consider doing, all that extra work. But because you want to make it something that's so your own, that you don't have to say, oh, well, why is this? You can say, oh, well, it's because I built all of this. And I'm not absolutely that way for everything, but when I am obsessed about something, it's, yes, I need to know why all of this works the way that it does so that I can do it well and to where I'm satisfied with it. So I've definitely had that experience, and I don't know how much that differs from how a normal person experiences something or is motivated about something. I think a lot of people are actively motivated about things that they're very, very interested in. But I think, at least my experience of the things that people have told me that I find like so normal, like the sound stuff. Like, I run and I redesigned the sound system at my church, and everybody's like, oh, well, he can do that, so he's the expert there. And it's like, but it's not. And I think, but it's not that hard or complex. Like, I rebuilt computers, I've rebuilt engines, I've worked on cars, all this stuff. And I think when people say, oh, well, that's really difficult, and I think, well, it's just like a process of figuring things out. Like, you just ask questions and you figure it out. but that's not the normal way people even view life, right? So I don't know if that hugely answers your question, but or in the beginning, yeah. So I think it does hugely influence the way that you do things because you have to answer those questions that you're asking.
Yeah, and every question leads to two, three, five more
Mm-hmm.
questions. And as you said, when you know it, you've just rebuilt an engine, or you made your own guitar, or you learned how to cook some obscure type of meal from halfway across the world. And people, and it's interesting, like you said as well, for us is something, yeah, you see that I'm already um, identifying as having the same condition. Um, but yeah, for you, it's normal. So it's something natural for you. So yeah, why not like get the lumber and make my own guitar? Like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
But for other people, your friends might be like, why did he do this? Why didn't he just go to Guitar Center and buy a new guitar then if you wanted one?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not about the thing itself. It's like the process of learning how the type of the wood will affect the sound, and how the if you put a humbucker or if you put a single coil, it how it will change, and think about the width of the strings and everything
Mm-hmm.
that goes into it. And it's like this large puzzle in your head, and like building a blueprint and then making it a reality. And that's what fascinates you. But for people, and we're unapologetically calling them normal, that would make us weird, I guess. But yeah, for other people, they might think, wow, this guy's a weirdo. This guy is a bit crazy, or at least eccentric. But on the other hand, it's so much fun to get obsessed about something and go deep and ask all the questions and read everything you can about it. Or like if you get obsessed about a certain author or a certain actor or musician, and you go into everything you can find that this person has ever done. And it's so much fun. At least, I mean,
Yeah,
maybe normal
and the
people
other
won't think so, but yeah.
well, the other part of it is like that noticing, and I'm sure you've done this because you can be like when you're obsessed with someone, it's like you can read through something 10 times or listen through something and then you pick something else out differently. And it's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that before." From listening to it again. And I think and maybe this isn't your experience, but I've noticed it with me is that I'm very much like I can listen to the same music a lot, or I can eat the same thing a lot because every time that I'm experiencing it, it's like it was new. That is another big thing with low latent inhibition is when you're actually experiencing something is it feels new to it. You're noticing everything in a different way. And like weird example, I had cinnamon life for probably every day for 7 years and I never got tired of it. And I probably could still be eating it today. But a lot of that is that feeling of, and I do this with music all the time. Music is probably a better example than cinnamon life, but um, is when I'm listening to something, I'm trying to notice something else, or I'm trying to hear that part that I didn't hear before, or I notice a different note or a different way that the chord interacts with something else. And you just experience everything in much more of a like introspective kind of way. And then when you go to somebody else and you say, "Listen to this. This is amazing." And then they're like, "Oh yeah, well, I guess that's cool." I don't know if you've ever experienced that before, but that's a huge one with me. When I share something with someone, and it's like, "You got to listen to this. It is so amazing." And then you don't tell them that you've listened to it like 100 times in a row, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty neat, I guess." But yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I was thinking about it while you were speaking, because I was thinking, well, there are things that I do or that I eat, for instance, that I kind of don't get like I pretty much could eat the same breakfast every day, but at the same time, I'm very much a foodie and I like to
Mm-hmm.
experience new things and try new things. So I was even thinking like maybe I don't have low latent inhibition then because there are things that I sort of I get bored with if I do them a lot. But at the same time, I think there's this thing of you noticing layers that most people wouldn't notice, be it with music, like listening to. Sometimes there are some obscure instruments that you can barely hear, but
Mm-hmm.
only if you pay a lot of attention, and most people will probably not even notice them. And like noticing the layers or the flavors or the colors or everything. So yeah, it might be, and correct me if I'm wrong, more of a thing of being able to perceive more of the details, being able to, like, when you look at something or when you listen to something, you can perceive or you can process more information than most people, and maybe that's why you can, like, listen to the same song 100 times and find something different every time.
Yeah, I definitely think that's part of it. And I wouldn't say like I think what you said about where you like to experience new things and try new food, but you could still like eat the same stuff a lot. I think that's very normal for somebody that has low latent inhibition because you still like enjoy experiencing new things, but you can find something new every time that you experience something similar. And like with and I think like we could be, somewhat different too. Like I know I'm a very like audible learner, and like that's one of my huge focuses, and I'm not quite as much I would say like tactile. um if I'm listening to something, I can hear and understand and remember. But there was another thing that I wanted to talk about just briefly. I know we're coming up to really close to our time. So, another thing that you might experience with it is a lot of people with low latent inhibition have not, it's not photographic memory, but it's like experiential memory. So, when you are like remembering something or recalling something, it's much more tied to like what you're experiencing in that moment. So you may be able to remember and think of scenes like the entire thing based on one or two things that you were experiencing in that moment, rather than like a photographic memory. You can remember what everything on the page, but with experiential memory, you can remember like very specific details and how things happen based on one or two things that you were feeling in that moment. And these can be day-to-day things, or they can be, bigger events, but you remember them in incredibly vivid detail where you can like describe everything about them. That's another big one that we didn't really get to touch on at all. And I don't know how you remember stuff or how that process is for you.
Yeah, I think it depends on what happened, but there are many things that, like, if I look at an old picture, for instance, I might recall, like, if a, it's like if a movie goes through your mind of you in that situation, and I'm not sure how accurate it is because you know that our memories
Mm-hmm.
play tricks on us. With time, they memories kind of change, but. But yeah, there are things like I have these movies from my early childhood that I can replay, and it's like it's really weird. I don't know if people remember when they were like
Yeah.
1 or 2 years old, but I remember some things and some random information. I know so much trivia, like random details of things that I don't even like. Many times when I'm explaining to someone something, I'm like, I don't know why, but I know this. And
Yeah.
it goes back to what you said before, like sometimes you kind of get frustrated because you're just like you want to blurt the answer out or you want to just like, man, trust me, I know this. And the person is like, yeah, but why? And then you have to think about 50 steps that you had to take subconsciously to get where, like, to get the conclusion. And the act of rethinking it step by step is so time consuming and so energy consuming that you're like, yeah, just leave it at that. Like, I used to get
Yeah.
so frustrated with this before.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. That's a huge, yeah, especially when you notice it, it's the worst. It's like, all right, can we just move on? Like this is the answer. Let's keep going.
Yeah,
Something better or
and
harder. Yeah.
then you get frustrated because the person doesn't understand, and you're like, okay, you have this, and you want to get here. So obviously, the easiest way is the straight line. And the person is like, no, how do you know this? No, it's not the straight line. And then you're like, okay, so you do a little bit here, and then here, and then here, and then from here you see it like straight
Hmm.
line, right? No, it's not this. And you're like, oh, come on.
Yep. Yeah. And like I said, I'm sure now you're going to go into a deep dive into LLI, but it has been
Yeah.
so incredible to learn and even just have that perspective of okay, this is how I part of the way that I think, and it helps me rationalize. And I think it's important for anybody to like understand psychologically how you work. I think it's very helpful. And for me, it was massively helpful to say, okay, well, maybe I just experience things different than other people, and that's perfectly okay. And I don't have to feel like I'm an outsider, or I don't have to feel like I'm doing something wrong, the way that I'm thinking or the way that I'm reacting to certain things is just because I'm wired different, and I'm not saying that you should give absolutely every excuse to how you think and what you do because a lot of that can be changed. But I think there is some validity in saying, understanding how you work and how you react to stuff may just be part of who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Understanding yourself and how you're wired naturally definitely helps you navigate the world. And I think this ties into something that we were talking about before about education and it not being made for the guys on the tails of the bell curve. It's very much tailored to the average, and I'm not sure how they could do anything differently, actually. Maybe unless you really segregated by IQ or something, the kids. But there are many things like LLI that people don't even know that are a thing, and just by researching them and knowing how things work, you might like maybe not only understand yourself better, but you know that things that some of the things that people have always told you were wrong about you, not necessarily are wrong, like you said, like you not being as patient as other people to explain things might not necessarily be a problem. It might be a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
And I think many things we tend to not understand and deem as bugs. Like, oh, that guy is shy and that's a bad thing. He's an introvert, that's a bad thing. Not necessarily. Like
Hmm.
everything in nature, yeah, it's a double-edged sword. So you have a thing that may be bad, but at the same time you have if you use it well, it can be a superpower. So by knowing yourself, you can know like the things that I used to deem as bad, how can I use them to my advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm always one for like introspection. Like if the more that you can think about how what you're doing and how you're affecting other people, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert or, you know, however you treat life or how other people treat you, when you start thinking of what do I really want in life? Am I happy with how I am? Is some of it just normal for me? Is there things that I can change? Because I think that lens of um, just awareness in general of who you are and how you think is massive for your own personal growth. And the unfortunate part about it is sometimes we can have that awareness. Sometimes it has to be given to us by other people. And sometimes we can't get it unless we actually go out and experience the negative form of that awareness, you know? So, but yeah, I'm very glad for conversations like these, because if I can come back and take away something from it that I wasn't thinking about or didn't know I was reacting in a certain way, and I can think about that, it's a huge growth potential that for myself, and I think for people to just be happier in general with themselves and how they act. And because, like you said, someone might be viewed as shy because they're an introvert, when they can take two choices. They're like, either figure out how to deal with their introvertedness in a public situation, or they can, accept that and go find some more friends that are going to accept them who they are, So like, and maybe that's just the LLI and me figuring out some things for people that aren't solutions for them. But yeah, I think whenever we get the opportunity to have awareness and introspection, I think it's something we should take. So yeah.
Yeah, I love this, man. I can resonate a lot with this. And yeah, this conversation has been so much fun, and I'm sure that anyone listening to this will get a ton of value because we talk so much about marketing funnels, sales, the future of newsletters, AI,
Mm-hmm.
LLI. We've talked about so many things like building guitars and building engines. And yeah, man, I think that, like you said, when you get something that's, yeah, sometimes like I have a hard time talking about things this way. Like, it seems like we're trying to say that we're smarter than we are. But when you get a dense conversation with topics like these and talking to intelligent people, and which is kind of a privilege in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, if you listen to this another time or two other times, you will get other aspects of the conversation that we didn't even think about in the first run. And yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. It's been very interesting so far. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. And I think if I had more time, I would love to do podcasting on the regular. Maybe I will in the future. Maybe that should be 2025 goals. But I've loved having this conversation with you. And like you said, it was quite the array of topics. So yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, man, maybe you can record a podcast while you're building a guitar. That could be like
I probably
multitasking.
could. I was out last night, working on a guitar neck that I got mostly shaped, but yeah, that would be a good way to multitask. Have some extra
And
content
are you
and
building it according to one of the most like regular or famous shapes, or is it something new?
like the body that I have is a S shape, which is a pretty standard. Like it looks like this actually. It's like exactly like this. Um, so this neck might be for something else. It's a little bit smaller, so I might make like a really ergonomic headless type guitar out of it. So yeah, that might be the direction I can take this other build. I have like a whole bunch of wood that I dried last year out of some cherry that I've been building out of, and then I just sawed up a bunch of walnut and maple. So I'm excited to be able to turn that into some more interesting projects. So yeah, I think the neck that I was working on the other night is going to be for a more like Strandberg style headless guitar, or like the new Ibanez Q series that's really small. And that's my kind of guitar. I like smaller, really easy to play kind of stuff. So yeah, not to go on a completely other tangent, but
Oh,
that is what I'm working on.
those are the best ones, man. Yeah. Yeah, maybe next time we should talk just about instruments and music in general, because That's another one that we could go for hours on. And I never played a headless guitar before, or a double-necked one for that matter. Not that they have anything to do with each other, but it came to mind.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I,
it would be interesting too. Sorry to cut you.
no, you're good. I haven't ever played a headless guitar, but they're like actually a little bit easier to build, believe it or not. So that's why I was looking to work on one. So yeah, no, we absolutely need to have just a music discussion podcast because I could talk about music for 8 hours straight. So we'll have to have some interesting viewpoints clash there. So
Yeah, man, just to hear about your experiences with the musical festivals that your uncle does, that would be pretty cool. And man, to wrap up, I always ask this question, and I know I've asked you the last time, but it might have changed in a few months, especially for someone with LLI. So, what's your definition of success?
right now, it is I want to be able to authentically spend as much time with my family as possible. That is my current definition of success. Everything else in my mind has kind of been melting away, and it's like my goal right now is to be able to create or make something where I can make that vision of whatever that I'm doing allows me to spend the most time with my kids and with my wife as possible. And I think with what I'm building and what I'm working towards, that's really my biggest drive. And that hasn't necessarily changed a lot over the last 6 to 8 months, but it's come way more into focus. Like it helps me when it's 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm up working. It's like, yeah, okay, well, I'm doing this because of this. And to me, if in a year or 6 months or 2 years, like I can achieve that goal of whether it's location freedom or just 9 to 5 freedom, or it's just, I get extra time to be able to do the things that I want to do with them, that would be my definition of success in the next 6 months to a year.
That's a beautiful definition, man. Very inspiring. And are there any last words you'd like to leave our audience with, or if you want to plug some of your offerings, go ahead, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with a plug. I own and operate Lettercraft LLC. You can find me at Lettercraft, and that is LETTRCRAFT. The second D is left out. Lettercraft.com. That's my website. Lettercrafter on X. I'm over on LinkedIn. If anybody's on LinkedIn, I'm doing a lot more over there. So if you want to connect, that would be great. Other than that, easiest way to get a hold of me is on X for sure. So yeah, that's most of my plug. And advice for anybody that's on X. X is not the only thing out there. You should probably be working on something else as well. So there's my last word. Go out into the real world and do something important.
Yeah, that's a cold shower for the ones needing it.
Uh-huh.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was my friend JC Rodriguez, my musician and polymath friend. Find him at Lettercrafter.